Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And of course the topic number one is the long-range missiles and that the Western countries authorize Ukraine to attack deep inside of Russia. And this information was confirmed by many sources, and first of all this information was officially confirmed by Zelensky. Zelensky confirmed that Ukraine received permission to strike with NATO missiles, and as you can see he pointed that it's not just Western missiles or let's say missiles of the third countries. He pointed that this is the NATO missiles. Now that there are relevant decisions, and not only in the media but also in the relevant countries, it is very important to add to these decisions the number of opportunities with which we can reduce the military potential of the Russian Federation, whatever it is. Now everybody is talking about the long-range missiles, and the Ukrainians also published the video, most likely of the moment when they were attacking the ammo depot on the territory of Russian Federation. In this video we can see, according to Ukrainian sources, the process when the Ukrainians launched those 6 ATACMS missiles. I'll remind you that 5 of them were brought down by the Russians according to the official statement of the Russian Federation, and 1 of them fell on the territory of the airfield and there was dealing significant damage. You know, the Ukrainians are using very interesting tactics. The Ukrainians before attack, you know that they are limited in the number of these missiles. According to information we have, the Ukrainians, the British Times claims that the Kiev has about 50 American ATACMS missiles at its disposal, which means that Ukrainians are very limited and they can't attack whatever they like. Furthermore, even if they know what they want to attack and when they want to attack, first they need to make a very big homework to prepare this or that roads of attack before launching another ATACMS missiles. And to do this, the Ukrainians are using the significant number of drones. When the Ukrainians know where exactly they are planning to attack, first sending the significant number of drones. For example, during the previous night between the 19th and the 20th of November, the Ukrainians sent in the direction of Bryansk up to 42 drones. Most of them were brought down by the Russian air defense, but now we understand that Russian air defense might be empty. The Russians need some time to reload these air defense systems, and now it's perfect time for the Ukrainians to carry out another missile strike and to destroy something more. So this is the tactics that Ukrainians are using. And you know that while people are talking about these long-range missiles, about Ukrainian tactics and what the Ukrainians are planning to achieve, about the Third World War, the Russians continue destroying the Ukrainian energy facilities and the airfields that Ukrainians might use for F-16s or different, let's say, carriers of different missiles, including the Scalp, including Storm Shadow, or even Taurus cruise missiles. For example, according to information we have, on the November 19th, so yesterday, at about 5 a.m. of Ukrainian time, the Russians attacked the airfield, and as a result of that attack, the Ukrainians lost several cruise missiles carriers. Furthermore, we got reports that the Russians, during the previous day, on the 19th of November, attacked the city of Zaporozhye with the Gerань drones, and as a result of these attacks, the Russians managed to destroy this energy facility. Very important energy facilities that Ukrainians are using to support their forces and the cities and towns in the city of Zaporozhye itself, and of course in the eastern Ukraine. So while the Ukrainians are thinking how to attack deep inside of Russia, the Russians continue doing their job. They're destroying Ukraine energy facilities, and all these updates are telling us just about one thing: the Russians are planning to black out Ukraine completely. And today we got a very interesting and very strange piece of news from Kiev, more precisely from the US Embassy in Ukraine, and we got the following statement. The US Embassy in Kiev has received specific information of potential significant air attack on November 20th. Out of abundance of caution, the embassy will be closed, and embassy employees are being instructed to shelter in place. The US Embassy recommends US citizens be prepared to immediately enter the either in the event of air alert and announcement. So this is the situation. The United States of America, the embassy, told us that most likely today the Russians will launch the biggest attack ever, with the purpose most likely to destroy as many as possible energy facilities, airfields, and probably the Russians will try to hunt and to destroy the Ukrainian warehouse where they're storing the ATACMS missiles, because for the Russians this is the vital question, and not just because the Ukrainians will continue using this ATACMS missile, but the most problem is that during the previous period of the special military operation, the Russians managed to concentrate the significant number of warehouses, ammo depots very close to the border. I don't know why the Russians were doing this, because maybe they didn't expect that the Western countries will lift any restrictions to attack deep inside of Russia, and now the Russians have no chances. They don't have any other option but to attack massively, and sometimes with low effectiveness, just to destroy as many as possible as they can reach, and something like this. Because if they miss the target, if the Russians didn't complete their missions with the missile strike, most likely the Ukrainians will counterattack with their ATACMS missiles. The Ukrainians, we know, are supported by intelligence from the Western countries, and most of these ammo depots and warehouses in this region might be destroyed by the Ukrainians, and these are millions of dollars losses for the Russians. So that's why they will try to avoid this situation. Now, so we're waiting the 20th of November. Very interesting how the things are going to be developed. Now let's talk about the directions, and today the Russians resumed their attempts to attack in the Kursk area. And according to information we have, the Russians improved their positions along the road between the villages of Nova Ivanovka in the direction of Sverdlikova. At least we have changes on map, and these changes on map were confirmed by geolocation that was provided us by the force of 225th Battalion of the Armored Forces of Ukraine. In this video we can see several Russian baggies that were attacking the Ukrainian positions, and the Ukrainians were trying to FPV drone them. Furthermore, we have a huge concentration of FPV drone strikes in the direction of Sverdlikova, and very interesting that the Russians began using new type of drones in this area. The drones that are completely the Ukrainians don't have, there is no electronic warfare equipment that can jam these drones or can break them or that can take control over them. So this is new technology that the Russians invented, and they began using these drones massively. So the Russians currently don't care about any resistance of any electronic warfare equipment in this direction, which of course increase the losses of the armored forces of Ukraine. Most likely during the next several days the Russians will try to attack in the direction of the settlement with the purpose to take under control the villages of Darina, Nikolai, Darivna, and maybe to enter the northwestern part of Sverdlikova itself. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Kursk, the Kupiansk direction. The Russians currently are managed to dig in deeper. Now they're regrouping, bringing additional forces. Maybe the Russians are trying to carry out cleaning up operation, but as you can see, without any changes on the ground. The changes are coming from the southern pincer of the Kupiansk pincer's offensive operation. The Russians, according to information we have, according to video that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, managed to take under control the forest completely and to move even further. The Ukrainian sources published the video of how they were FPV droning the Russian units and Russian troopers exactly in this area. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map. Basically, based on this video, most of the mappers have adjusted their maps, including neutral ones. So the Russians captured this territory. This is the situation on the ground by the end of the 19th of November. This is by the beginning of 20th of November. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Chasov Yar direction. The sources are saying that the Russians managed to improve their position significantly, and currently the clashes are taking place exactly for this complex, for this industrial zone. We haven't received anything that can confirm this, just posts, but very reliable sources are telling us about this. Let's talk about the city of Toretsk. The Russians resumed their offensive operation probably a week ago, and during the previous week and today they managed to improve their position significantly, and everything is telling us that the battle for the Toretsk is coming to an end. During the first phase of Russian offensive and Russian assault of Toretsk, the Russians were trying to take under control the central citadel, this one, the mine and the Terikon of by the name of Center. But most of Russian attempts to attack the stronghold were repelled by the Ukrainians, and furthermore, when most of those attacks were repelled, the Ukrainians conducted counterattack, and as a result of Ukraine counterattack, they managed to restore control over the Zabalka district. And now the Russians, then there was a very long long pause. The Russians were thinking what to do next, and they decided not to attack the central citadel anymore, and the Russians decided to move in the northern direction towards the village of Krymska, Dachne, and towards this landfill and this mine of Toretsk. And today we have geolocations that confirm additional progress on the ground. In this video we can see the Ukrainians that were after withdrawing the Russians and bombing the Russian forces exactly in this point. Furthermore, different mappers also updated their maps in Russian favor. And since the beginning of November also we got reports that the Russians managed to improve their positions in the direction of Dachne. Summarizing everything, we can make a conclusion that currently the Russians are trying to take this mine and this mine of Toretsk and the Terikon into pincers. The Russians are trying to attack using this road to attack from the southwest, and the Russians are trying to attack the same territory through the village of Dachne, most likely with the purpose to cut the main supply roads and so on. So summarizing everything, most likely this is exactly what the Russians are planning to take under control during the next several days. When this landfill and the mine is being captured by the Russians, then most likely the Ukrainians will not be able to show resistance in this part of Toretsk, and they will be forced to fall back towards the villages of Novospalne and Vremivka. Anyway, we are coming to the final stage of the battle of both for the city of Toretsk and the city of Chasiv Yar. Now let's move further. Let's talk about the Kurakhove direction, where the situation continues suffering the significant losses and territory losses, the most important. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the village of Berestki, and by the morning of the 20th of November, some sources already reported that the village of Berestki was captured by the Russians. Maybe today the Minister of Defense will provide us this information. Maybe we're gonna have another video with flag, but as for now we have just the video with the flag in the most southwestern part of the settlement by the name of Nova Ilinka. The Minister of Defense of Russian Federation just yesterday stated about control over this territory, and now we have the flag that also confirmed this information. So the Russians are moving, and the battle for the village of Berestki has started, but once again, according to different experts, this village was also captured. As for the city of Uspianovka, we start receiving first updates from the stronghold. We haven't received anything from the stronghold since the beginning of the assault operation, and now we start receiving lots of videos of how the Russians were after withdrawing and attacking the Ukrainian vehicles on the streets of the village of Uspianovka, which means that the Russians currently are very close to the stronghold itself, and most likely during the next 48-72 hours the Russians will begin first attempts with the purpose to take under control this stronghold, which will lead to complete collapse of Ukrainian defense in this area. Furthermore, we have changes on the ground in the vicinity of Yelizavetovka forest. This one, the video was provided by the Russian forces, and in this video we can see the process of how the Russians were storming this forest itself. I'll remind you that according to different mappers, neutral mappers, pro-Ukraine mappers, the forest was already captured a long time ago, 2, 3, 4 days ago, but just now we got real geolocation from the Russian sources that confirms additional progress and how exactly the assault process was taking place. As you can see, the Russians were using the significant number of armored vehicles. The Russians were bombing the edge Ukrainian positions, and we see no resistance from the Ukrainian side. And based on this video, we have adjusted the map, at least in the southwestern part of the forest. Furthermore, we have reports that the Russians managed to improve their positions along this Balka, along the river of Balka Gliniana. This territory was captured, and this information was confirmed both by neutral mappers and by pro-Ukrainian mappers. This situation is very critical. As you can see, the village of Ilinka is already semi-encircled, and most likely during the next 48 hours the village of Ilinka would be captured and cleaned by the Russians completely, which will also lead to another episode of complete disaster of the armored forces of Ukraine in this direction. Now let's talk about the Velika Novoselovka area. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, if you remember, several days ago reported about complete control over the settlement, but just today the Russian Russian sources published the video of how 2 Russian soldiers were raising the flag in the most western part of the settlement. The area, as you can see, completely secured. The Russians weren't afraid of anything, which means that Ukrainians were very far from the place where the Russians raised the flag. And the sources reported that the full-scale offensive operation in the direction of Orekhov and Gulai Pole have already started. The Russians are pushing, and most likely during the 20th of November we will also receive additional geolocations and videos that will confirm additional progress on the ground. As for now, we have just different military strikes, artillery strikes, different aviation strikes on the Ukrainian positions in the vicinity of the city of Orekhov itself. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.